good morning, and welcome to Touch Base Day. My name is Ron Foster, and I'm touching base with you as I always do. And I'm with my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Edwards. Good morning,
Good
Chris. How
morning.
are you today?
I'm feeling bummy today. I'm just gonna be honest.
You're
As you can
feeling
tell.
bummy. You
Yeah,
feeling
today it's just
bummy.
like whatever. We're just on.
I think when I looked at Chris when he came on, I said, Chris, you just look very apathetic today.
Yeah, I think that's a good
So what's going
characterization.
on? Is there anything going on in the news? I did not really look at news today, and I just know that people are wrapping their head around what happened in Texas, all the stuff that's going on. Now they're finding out that Ted Cruz approved pulling some things out of the bill that would have helped them, but that doesn't go into effect now. But ah,
Same
this
old, same old.
same old, same old. So we
Yeah,
could talk
but if
about
you
something
listen,
different.
also Lawrence Odell again. I love listening to him. He, last night's show, he talked about how the reporters, especially the Fox reporters, are just stupid,
They're just stupid.
and how like they quote unquote followed up with a follow up question. And this orange mess just does not know how to answer questions, and he doesn't know anything. First, he said he knew nothing about
Oh, that
ceasing the
questioning.
aid,
That
ceasing the aid
questioning.
to Ukraine, and then he
Yes.
said, "Well, obviously, I know about it. I would have been the one to approve it. The question is, though, which one is it? Did you not know about it, or did you approve it?"
Yes, that
It's
was
like the same question
wild.
they asked him, and he had two different answers on two different days. It's just ridiculous.
It
We're all going to hell
is.
in a handbasket, as they would say.
We we are in trouble. We
We've been
are
in
in
trouble.
trouble as a country. The images that are going out every day of people being
Are we
attacked.
not live?
Oh yeah, we're live.
Oh, because like I'm not seeing any comments.
Yeah, I don't see any comments either, but it says we're live. We're
Okay, it says
live.
one person. It says one person watching. So we'll just talk to ourselves today.
We're just talking like we normally do. They're just in on the conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no one. It's not showing. Maybe have we been shadow banned? I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I don't
I don't
know.
know anything.
Oh,
Hey, Kimmy's in
there's
the building.
Kimmy.
There's a
Kimmy's in the
Kimmy. There's
building.
a Kimmy.
Uh,
There's a Kimmy.
Hold on. Let me
There's a
ask you a
Kimmy.
question. So let's start on a light note. You had
Yes,
your future buyer or the current buyer of your new home of your
yes.
old home there. How was that experience yesterday?
Oh man. First of all, you know me. I'm an investigator. So as soon as I found out who she was,
Don't tell too much. Don't tell too much on here because she might watch this or they might watch this. But
I
go ahead.
did go in and looked at who she was because she wrote such a beautiful letter,
Yeah.
and the letter was beautiful. It was quite moving, and she took the time to share her emotions and how she felt about the apartment, and then she also put in her company.
Oh,
So I said she wanted me to know her company because the company was
yeah.
in there. And so I had to go to Instagram and look up her company and see that she was a BIPOC company owner. And so she's a creative, and I saw her platform. There's lots of she's a white woman, but I think I don't think she's Hispanic. She's white, and but she really has a lot in her website about the people of diversity. Is lots of DEI, lots of
Mm,
diversity and inclusion on her site. And I just said, oh, okay. So it kind of like set it up. I only knew her from her letter, and
hmm.
then I knew her from her website, and
Okay.
because she included it. And then meeting her in person yesterday, it just brought it all together.
Nice.
And she seems like she's a really nice woman, and I think my neighbors are going to love her because on this floor we're all close. When my neighbors next door, they go on vacation or go away, they leave me their keys, so that way if they have anything going on, we all look out for each other. We call each other up if something looks wrong or different. And you know.
Right.
Down the hall the other way, I'm helping her with her television today and getting her Roku set up. And then my other neighbor who left and went to Portugal, who also inspired me to sell my apartment because she sold her apartment last year this time. And and her son were across the hall, and I used to just hang out, and then she gave me some of my plants that are here. When she decided to move,
Gotcha.
she started purging her apartment, and so she gave me some plants and my wonderful orchid that's behind me. I don't know if you guys can see my wonderful orchid on the table there. And people are
Yeah.
like, "Is that real?" And it's real. It blooms every 6 months, and but she had it and it was dying, and I was like, okay, let me bring life to it. So we are close on this floor, right? And the rest of the building, we have people that we're close to, but there's a lot of new
Yeah.
people in the building. When I first moved here, there was only two Caucasian people in the building. Two.
Mm.
And they were here from the original. Well, the gentleman that was here, he worked for the Navy Yard building the
Okay.
ships when this was a
Okay.
military base. This was the
Wow.
housing for the military. So, and then the woman who lived, not, I think she lived on another floor down, a couple of floors down. She was the wife of one of the workers from the Navy Yard. And so there
Wow.
were two nice, elderly people that were old when I first
Mhm.
moved here. They have long passed away. And, but there was only two. There was only two, and now the building is mostly Caucasian. So it's
Mm.
the changing tide of Clinton Hill and
Well,
the changing tide
time
of,
really does tell
downtown.
you about a neighborhood
Yeah.
and um, the ethnic makeup of it. 'Cause I mean, like where I grew up, when we first, because I'm originally from Jamaica. My mom and my dad lived in that town um, from when they first moved from Jamaica. So they've been there uh 47 years roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely see the change in the ethnicity and the makeup of the town over those years. It was predominantly a white town back in the day. I remember like our high school had like archery and rifle clubs. The swimming pool was open, and then over time it became predominantly black town.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a predominantly Spanish town. Like the majority of the town makeup is Hispanic. But you can definitely tell over time, the communities that come in there raise their families, and it's not as though like they live on the outskirts. Like they're living in the homes that the white people used to live in back in the day. And these were like some really nice big homes over there. So yeah, you can definitely tell makeup over time, and that's what this country is: diversity.
But that's America. America is diverse.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. That's what makes our country
Well,
beautiful,
did.
as we stride towards diversity, as we stride
Yeah.
towards equality, as we stride towards inclusion. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's a group of folks that want to take us way back to 1853, maybe. That's the number we're calling it, 1853.
Yeah.
And they don't want diversity. They don't want to see anyone in control or in power or making decisions unless they're white and male and have money, because they
Yeah.
don't want poor white men to be in charge either. When you look at 1853, poor white men didn't have any say as well. So that's why that's what's really baffling about MAGA, is because there's so many people that are poor and they're following these rich people. It's the when history is written 100 years from now, they will say, how is it that rich people beguiled poor people into worship and believing in them? That is going to be a study
It's all about
for,
proximity.
yeah, it's, but think about it. I mean, the red states are poor, for the most part.
Hmm.
Yet they keep voting for people that don't give a hoot about them. It's the
They
most,
don't, and that don't fit their profile makeup.
yeah, it's you would think they would be on board to follow someone that is against poverty, against,
Nope.
against those that that are against the working class, those that are they will be against those that are against unions, union busting. It's so weird. It's so weird that we are in this position.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just sit there. It baffles me every day when I look across the stories.
Where you headed
We
today? You got all dressed up in your black shirts.
I just wanted to. Well, yesterday I had the blue one on, and I said, let me look a little
Okay.
decent. So
Okay.
Lisa says, I clicked Ron's story about the Pratt family mansions in Brooklyn. Very interesting. Those suckers were rich, rich. Yes, they were. Yeah. Oh, you must have saw some old footage. That was some old footage. And it's interesting. I mean, where I live in Clinton Hill was considered gilded the gilded age of the gilded age street.
The
So
elite.
yeah, so this was where all the rich people of Brooklyn lived. Um, and it started from the waterfront, which was then where the Navy Yard is now. Oh, and then they believed in living above people. So this is Clinton Hill. So it's on a hill, and so it's perched where on the top of Clinton Hill, before there were buildings, you could see all the way into Manhattan because it was a hill. And so it rose above the sea level. And so Clinton Avenue has one of the greatest collections of Gilded Age mansions.
Mm.
You
It's a
know,
beautifully lined street, like the trees, the width of the road, and then
yes.
just the architecture that lines that street. Really, really
The,
beautiful.
the architecture is incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I used to just walk around just to look at the architecture and fantasize that one day I'm going to own one of these properties. And like I ended up here on
You
the
live above it?
I ended up being above it, but
Yeah.
but I ended up living on Clinton Avenue, which is crazy because when I was a kid, I used to walk down Clinton Avenue and I would say I would live on Clinton Avenue because I was living on Fulton Street, which was hell with drugs and alcoholic people and fights, and it was a mess when I lived in Fulton Street over a storefront. And so that's where I grew up. But I used to walk and go up to Clinton Avenue and then walk all the way down to the end of Clinton Avenue. Well, right to Myrtle Avenue because we didn't want to stay on Myrtle Avenue too long because it was called Murder Avenue back in the day.
Hmm.
And then you walk right back towards Fulton Street, which was the drugs and the Vietnam veterans and the methadone centers. And it was just,
Yeah, Brooklyn was wild back in the day.
it had, and also back when I was growing up, Clinton Hill had vanished. It was considered Fort Greene. And then
Oh,
historians in the neighborhood reclaimed Clinton Hill back
interesting.
in the early, I would say in the late 70s. And they started putting out these little newsletters to the neighborhood called the Clinton Hill. And people started becoming fascinated with all the history in Clinton
Mm,
Hill, and that's how Clinton Hill then they started doing the historical landmarking in New York, and then they brought back Clinton Hill and put the historical landmarkings, and then people started living here because they were going to Pratt Institute. So you had kids that were coming from all over the country. Pratt Institute was getting more prominence because now it was in Clinton Hill. And then the kids that ended up going to school at Clinton Hill end up staying in Clinton Hill. And
Okay.
then that's when you began to see the changes because they were white kids from from the Midwest. They were white kids from California. They were white kids from upstate New York. They were white kids from all over the country. And the country then Clinton Hill started to becoming diverse. And now Clinton Hill is not as diverse as it used to be. Now it's the opposite direction. It used to be Spanish and Black. That was Clinton Hill. It was the hood, but you had the hood with mansions. So it
Yeah.
was a strange dynamic to the neighborhood. And
I
so
mean,
you
that's
saw
a
these,
great. It's a great blend of people. 'Cause
yeah.
I remember just when I was down there about a month ago.
Hmm.
Um, you just see like I mean, when I say diverse, like literally, you see everybody. You see
Everyone.
Asians, you see Spanish, you see blacks, you see Caucasians, and they're just all mixed in. A lot of sometimes when you go to certain areas, you see people in the groups in like their ethnic group, but you just saw everyone blended together, and it was not an issue. You know.
Yeah. This is definitely a unique neighborhood. And like I said, and then you knew when in the 90s you started to see more international influence. So now you had kids coming into colleges, St. Joseph College, the LI. I'm surrounded by lots of colleges. You had Delphi
Mm.
University, Long Island University, St. Joseph's,
LIU.
St. Francis, which I went to school. You have a Pratt Institute. Then you had lots of private schools here as well. Fort Greene Catholic, which is Queen of All Saints, Lockland High School. These are all private schools. So it just became a neighborhood of middle class, upper middle class people. Mostly everyone worked. People were moving into the neighborhood, but it became international in the 90s. And then you would go down DeKalb as they began to develop and put restaurants there, because we only had like 2 restaurants on DeKalb when I was growing up. And now every storefront is a restaurant. So, but you used to walk down DeKalb Avenue, or in some places say DeKalb.
Yeah.
Um, you would walk down and you would hear German, you know, you hear the
Mm.
German dialect, or you'll hear the French. So now you're walking down the streets and you hear all these multiple languages. And what ended up happening is that Clinton Hill became so known. Oh, now it works, right?
It's been doing it like lately for both of us.
So Clinton Hill became very big in the 90s when Architectural Digest did a story on Clinton Hill as one of the best neighborhoods to live in America.
Mm.
So then once that happened, that added a whole nother level. So now you had the college people here. And then when you had the best neighborhood in America, then you had international investments. So
But
companies bought brownstones in the neighborhood and bought apartments in the neighborhood, and they would use them for their international business partners would come here to live in America for 6 months at a time, or 12 or 3 years or 2 years. And then they would go back to Germany, go back to Paris, go back to wherever. Yeah.
a great sign of a bustling community is when you have colleges and universities that are diverse. Because you'll find that a lot of the kids, they come there, especially international students, they come there because they're not from here. They need places to stay, so they stay within the community. And a lot of times, when they graduate, they tend to stay in the same neighborhood and find
Hmm.
jobs in the areas. That was my case when I lived in Philadelphia. I went to school in Philly. I just never left. I stayed there for 13 years. I went to school there for 5 years because it was a 5-year program, but I ended up staying there, and I lived in the neighborhood not too far from where I went to school. Um, and that's normally the case whenever you go to like college towns or cities that have big universities. So, for instance, where we live now, we're a block away from the University of Delaware, and I mean, this is a college town. Um, and even though like during the summertime it's not as hectic and busy, you can still feel the presence of like that bustlingness of the school. You know,
Hmm.
so that's also a great one. So this is why it's so important to keep schools funded, because when you have schools that collapse, the towns around them collapse. I
Yes.
look at places like I'm gonna use, I don't know why I'm using this one, but like Cornell, those remote universities, if that school was to ever go under, that town would be wiped off the map, because the town itself and the surrounding areas depend on the university, because they, they supply food, they grow food for the area. The people, the economy is based off of the school basically, and that I think is true of any major university anywhere in the country.
Mm. David says, I grew up on army bases and neighborhoods until 20 and 22-ish. The schools and towns, very diverse, is what I loved about living there. Yeah, diversity is there's no, I even as a kid, I instinctively said I never wanted to live in an all black neighborhood. That was just not my thing. I love being with black people.
Love
But
your culture,
I didn't want to be in an all anything. I didn't want to be in an all white
right?
neighborhood. I didn't want to be in an all Spanish neighborhood. I didn't want to be in, I wanted diversity since I was a kid. I don't know why I was drawn to that, but I know when I went to high school was my first time being in a diverse environment, and my best friend was Chinese. David, David Lee. And David and I would hang out all the time. We would support each other because we were sophomores with a freshman and sophomore entry into our school. So
Yeah, same here.
we had to take double majors in high school.
Mm,
So we ended up going to school from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the evening.
that's a
And
long day for high
no, we had a
school.
long day. We had double majors in high school, and that
So
was
that's a
because we
full
were in.
work day.
That was a work day, and it was aviation high
Yeah.
school, and that was
Uh,
because we were getting our FAA licenses, and so to be able to build aircraft and all that stuff. So we were working towards but we had missed our freshman years because of our um our junior high schools they lost my records. I don't know what happened to David's, but they lost my records and then they had to find them. But I was proactive and going to my school dean every day saying, I need to be out of this zone school. I need to be out, 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 out. And I said, I'm not leaving this office until you find my papers, because I cannot survive 4 years at Sarah J. Hale. And for those that live in New York City, if you know the name Sarah J. Hale, Haale, we knew it as Hell because it
okay.
was hell. I mean,
Oh wow.
the first day of school in my zone school, we used to have what's called zone schools in New York City. And that's the school that you just happen to fall into because you didn't
Where
pick
you lived.
a school of academic, like vocational.
Okay.
So I ended up being dumped there until they found my papers. And on the first day, a guy got stabbed, but a girl stabbed him with the pencil in the
Domestic
stairwell.
violence.
And I was
Wow.
like, hell no, will I survive here? And I was immediately went to the dean's office and said, I am not wired for this environment.
Mm. Hold on, before you forget, because you mentioned something about, you went to aviation school. I just want to give a shout out to my cousin's son, my second cousin, Chase Holt. He's actually in flight school, and he just did his first solo flight, I believe on Wednesday. No, or Tuesday.
Awesome.
He
Congratulations.
posted it, yeah. I actually went, so I photographed him for he just graduated high school. I believe, will get his pilot's license by next month, and he's actually going to college for aviation. But he wants to go into starting college having his solo pilot license. So I believe he takes his test next month for it. So congratulations, Chase, on your solo flight. And I know that you will get your license before you start classes for the fall. It's amazing. Like this kid has been doing flight lessons for the last year and a half. He said, I want to fly. His mother said, okay. And I'm a true believer in allowing your kids to have their dreams, and then you as a parent or family supporting those dreams. Who would have thought that this guy wanted to be a pilot? He loves
Mm.
planes. Like who doesn't like planes or doesn't like boats, that type of stuff. And for his birthday, his 16th birthday, I believe it was, his mom and dad got him one flight lesson, and he fell in love. I actually, when I went up there, when I came up to you, that same day,
Mm-hmm.
to receive my beautiful gifted plants that I have at home here, that morning, I took him to his lesson, and before his lesson, we actually photographed him with his plane that he goes up in with his instructor. So part of his graduation photos was photos of him on a track. He's also a big track star, track and by his plane. So again, congrats, Chase Holt. I'm sure you probably don't watch it. I'll send you the link so you can watch it. But congrats on that.
Yeah, I know aviation. I was definitely the first person in my family to dive into the aerospace world,
Yeah.
aviation, and it ended up my younger brother, who's my brother through marriage, my sister's husband's younger brother, but my sister's husband was my best friend growing up, so I was already in their family, and we were
Gotcha.
already family members. And he grew into seeing my aviation background, and then he ended up following my footsteps and went to aviation
Oh,
high school
nice.
as well. And then he got his avionics license, he got his A&P license, and then became a pilot. He's a pilot now. He's been flying for years. And so it goes to show you, people are always watching, and you don't know who you're going to inspire.
Yeah.
I had no idea I was going to inspire he's my younger brother. He's always been my younger brother. He's not my blood brother, but I always call him my younger brother. And and now he's doing great things. He and his wife and my
Plus,
and my little nephew. My nephew is brilliant, and I can't wait to see them this hopefully in the fall. I'm gonna head on down there and hang out with them. So, but yeah, I mean,
the other thing too
you
is
don't know.
there's not a lot of people of color in aviation. So like to see them, and then also his flight instructor was black as well, a black male. So
Hmm.
that's really important to be able to see yourself in something you want to do.
And when I was growing up, when I was in high school, there were very few black people in the aviation industry. It was a white dominant Italian, some Irish, but mainly Italian field. And you had a lot of aviators that were, it was also very, I could say, there was a lot of bigotry and racism. And even in my high school, we had a KKK. I probably shouldn't say that. We had an organization called the Zoo Crew, and the Zoo Crew was this racist based school organization, not because it was part of the school. It was just it was an extension of high school students that loved the white bigotry. And
Wow.
so much so they got suspended. Remember when Atlanta had the kids in Atlanta, there were some black kids that were lynched. They went out and got t-shirts and put the lynching on the t-shirt and celebrated it.
Wow.
And they weren't expelled, but they were suspended. And but that was 1980. That was 1981. I think what that happened. A lot of you weren't even born when that happened, but there was lynchings in Atlanta of some black kids, and some of you might remember it. But what was really crazy is that my principal was black. My principal was black. And to also see how open racism was back in that day is that one of my teachers, I'll never forget, as long as I live. I was in class and the student, oh no, it came on because they had those little PAs where the principal can call the teacher and say, I need to see you in the office. And the principal has asked the teacher to come to the office. And then when the principal was off, I couldn't even believe that I wish the principal would have kept the intercom on, because what followed was horrible. He said, my mother, he said, see, this is why you need to get an education and get a good education so you don't have to work for the monkeys. Yes. And I said, I was like,
You know what
I'm in
though?
junior high school. Not junior high school. This is high school, but I'm a junior in high school. But back then, people used to get away with that kind of stuff.
You want to hear
But
something funny or
that was
ironic?
crazy back then.
So I heard when I was in college. No, actually, I take that back. After I got out of college, someone I worked with, she was from Africa. She was from Zimbabwe, as a matter of fact. One of my coworkers, and we used to hang out after work, whatever. She told me a story about when she went to when she was in college, because she went to Temple. All right,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Caucasian girl came up to her, and I lie to you not. 'Cause I asked her, I said, "This is not true." She's like, "Yeah, this happened to me." She came up to her and said, "Where's your tail?" He was like,
Yes, I've heard that in high school
she said,
also.
"Where's your tail?" She said, "I thought that all Africans had tails, like, because they were like monkeys." And I said, "You mean to tell me somebody
And they
came up to
believe
you while
that.
you were in college?" Now, mind you, we're different around the same age. So we went to school from like 94 to 99, 2000. Someone from this country with white skin came up to you and asked you, "Where is your tail?" That just shows the level of ignorance. And I don't care
Mm,
if you grew up in a small hick town where you only got one traffic light and one corner store that served like the general store. There should never ever be a moment where you feel emboldened to ask someone that type of question.
I've had that question happen to, not to me, but to one of my friends in high school. They said to him, and they asked him, they said, where was his tail? How are you able to hide your tail?
Yeah,
And he
like
would, this was, and and I wish I would presume that he thought black people had tails.
yeah,
It was the, when I went to high school, it was the first time that I had ever been exposed to racism. So I had, up until high school, I never had. I saw stories of it. My mom would tell me stories. My aunt would tell me stories.
you
My
didn't
father would.
experience it
My
for
father was in
yourself.
the Black Panthers, so he told me stories.
Yeah,
He
you
was
didn't
like
experience it
radical. My
yourself.
father was radical. My father was really radical back in the day. So I knew that racism existed. I just never had experienced it until I got to high school. And when I got to
Yeah,
high school, I experienced it on all levels. One of my teachers, he was racist. That English teacher, I'll never forget him. Oh, and I had never in my life failed a class, and he gave me a 35.
just
Could you
because.
imagine? I had not all my grades in school was 99, 98s, 97s. The lowest is a 90. And then I get to aviation high school, and my English teacher, he picked on me all the time
Yeah, but see,
and
that's when
then
you have
gave
to
me a 35.
you have to question when you look at there's something wrong there. And any administrator should be able to look at that report card and say, "All right, something's not right here." If
Yes,
it's not, because either there's something going on in the classroom that is not allowing you to do your best, or there's something wrong with the instructor. Because if you look at someone's grades and they have all 90s, and one class they have this 35. where they've never ever faltered in that particular subject, there's something wrong.
Well, I went to my principal. And said, "This is unacceptable." And my mother didn't know how to handle it because she was from she's from the South. So she's like, "Well, just go in and prove yourself next time," and blah 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 blah. And I was saying,
Yeah, I
"No,
get it.
this is I came home and at the kitchen table and cried.
I can only
I was
imagine.
devastated. I had a 35 on my report card. Had never in my life seen a 35. I said, "Who a 35? That's like saying this kid doesn't even care about studying."
He just shows up.
And
That's
he
attendance.
was racist. And we had to do Shakespeare, and he gave me a hard time with Shakespeare. He gave me a hard time on my reports. Every single thing I did, he was all in. But I had several racist teachers in high school, and they showed it. They did, and they weren't afraid to hide it. And but I remember it like it's because those things impact you as a child. When you're a
They
teenager,
do. They stick with you.
and you never experience it. And I was totally devastated. But it just gave me more, even it gave me more fuel to get a better grade. But it was hell. Anyway, I hear someone at the doorsteps. I do hear someone at the doorsteps.
And let's go back and say good morning to everyone. Kimmy Kim was number 1 in the room today, and then Lisa was second, and then closing up the rear was David. So hello, everyone.
There she is, Miss Elise. Oh, you're
muted. You're muted.
Turn on your mic.
Good
there
morning.
we go.
Different place today. She's working today, so I get a different color behind me today.
Okay.
So you're in the living room?
No, I'm not in the living room. This is her bedroom.
Oh, this is the bedroom. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Her bedroom accent wall.
Accent wall. Everyone likes to have an accent wall.
Yes, she has that color in her places. So,
yeah. Elise, but Elise, I'm sure you have stories, but yeah, that was my story.
So I always tell people my stories are so different than people raised in the North.
Yeah.
I was never called anything in the South. I was never made to feel less than, feel less than. Got to Cleveland, of course. Cleveland is one of the most racist places. Ohio is a racist state. One of the most racist places I've ever lived in my entire life was Cleveland, Ohio. Never directed toward me, but they had whole communities that Black people just weren't able to go into in the 70s. It was in the 70s. You just couldn't go in. It wasn't until much later when I had moved away, had kids, that the neighborhoods opened so that you could go in there and not worry about what would happen to you if you rode through the neighborhoods. So that was not my experience. Now my husband had the experience, and he grew up in Cleveland, which is always interesting. But I always think with teachers like the teacher you had, I had one professor at GW in graduate school. He would do things like, "Oh, well, your answer was more wrong than her wrong." I said, "But how does someone, if it's wrong, it's wrong. I'm a math person. Wrong,
yes.
It's not correct. It's not correct.
It's more wrong because you're Black.
Right.
It's more wrong.
I just went to the people and I said, "Look, I can't, I'm not going to have to deal with him. I'm not going to fight that. That's not my fight. I'm a grown woman. I have options. I don't have to fight this fight." Not that he ever said anything, but clearly he was racist. And I told him at the school he was racist. And then with your teacher, Ron, the whole thing was they're intimidated by your intelligence. Have you ever seen the movie Finding Forrester?
Yes, good movie.
Yeah.
And the white teacher in there, what he was intimidated by was the young Black boy's intelligence.
I totally identified with that movie. That was one of my favorite movies.
And it was his intelligence. He was intimidated by that because he had watered him down to only being an athlete, only being good for certain things. And so when you walk into a space and you challenge them, they don't want to be challenged. So their thing is, how can I break this person? And as far as the Black principle is concerned, I constantly tell people systemic racism is not about skin color.
That's right.
It's about how you treat groups of people because of who they are and how they look. And so Black people often in education participate in it, or they ignore it when children bring it to them and say certain things about teachers or other people. They just ignore it. I, of course, as an administrator, wasn't that person and challenged administration, and then their whole thing is also the issue of self-hate in there. Like, how you're making me look is another thing that goes through their head, because, that's one of the things as an administrator, I stopped telling children, when you go out, you represent me. No, you represent yourself. Bring your best self, because you're not representing me, because that means that at some point I will tell you that you embarrassed me. And so that also can destroy children. That cannot destroy young people when you say, "Oh, that embarrassed me," or "You didn't represent me well." And I think that that's one of the things we have to learn. Even as a mother, I have to learn that you're representing yourself. You're showing your best self to the world. And so those are just destructive words. And teachers children, I don't care who they are, they want to impress, and they respect the adults in their lives. Even as teachers, that's what they want to do. They want to make you happy. They want to please those people. And most people don't realize that when you do something and they really find out you don't like them and don't care about them, then they become a totally different person for you. They become they can be your nemesis. They can, because they don't want to hurt you. They don't want to be hurt. Children, young people, any person doesn't really function well with people they know that don't like them. It's just
let me tell you, when my teacher, I knew he didn't like me. I was like, could you imagine? I was one of the nicest kids you could probably. I am the nerd of nerds. Come in, do my work, and it was just disturbing to me that someone would not like me because, and I didn't really. At first, I didn't get the piece. I wasn't able to put it on like.
You can't
this is because
process it
I'm
because
Black.
you don't have a point of reference.
I had no reference of that. This is because I'm Black, and then, but I started to see that I was the only. I was like, I think I was the only Black kid in the class, and
which is a typical commonplace.
I got beat down every time in that class, and I just said. And then I went to my mother and said, "How is this possible that I'm studying? I'm studying my Shakespeare. I'm doing my Caesar. I got my Caesar because we had to study the play. We had to do the play. We had to do,
Right.
And I said, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but this teacher hates me." And then my mother kind of like, she didn't want to just say it. This is because you're a Black kid in a white kid in a white environment. And then, but I didn't realize until I kind of like dawned on me as I started to go through the years at the school that bigotry was all around me because I was Black. Because in my school, there was only out of my senior class, my senior class when we were seniors at that point, or the class that we came in as freshmen and sophomores, it was 600 and roughly 650, 670.
That's a large class.
High schoolers for our group, and out of that 600 plus staff, people, it was only 75 Black kids.
Okay.
So, but we stuck together. Now, one thing we did do, we did find each other, and we stuck together, and we supported one another, and we helped us. Because I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Top Gun. Top Gun, I went to an aviation high school, so it has the same feel as going to a Top Gun school, because we're in these classrooms with all of these mechanics, engines. We just how you see it in the movie Top Gun. We're in the hangar. We are in our chairs. We're learning. We have our coveralls on. We're dressed by our last name, so no one calls each other by their first name. It's all by the last names. We wear uniforms. I was in the cadets, so there was a lot of things that were so military, and but then it also gave me insight to how my grandfather, who was that fought in the Korean War, what was he going through in his day? Because here I am now, this is the future, and this is my future being in the 80s, and my grandfather's world was in this, the 50s and 40s, and I'm saying, wow, what was life like back then? But it was a rude awakening, but I have to say it made me a better person today. If I did not go through that at the age that I went through it, it just seems to be at the right point of my life that I was able to understand what was going on as people were telling me what was going on. It wasn't like I was too young to understand, but it was just at the place where my brain is opening up to the world and the realities. And so I was very, when I look back at it, I go, wow. And then it didn't end there. When I went to Wall Street to work at the stock exchange, it was aviation high school on steroids because everyone was using racial slang. They were calling black people buckwheat. They were calling people all kinds. I mean, it was crazy at the stock exchange.
That was bad.
But my whole life after my high school years of bigotry prepared me for my work years as a working adult, and that I was going to face discrimination no matter where I went to as a black kid or a black young man.
So I want to actually spin this because not too many times do we hear the positive stories, and I actually have a positive story. So when I was in college, mind you, I went to a predominantly white school, but it was very diverse. We had a lot of international students from like India and China. The school had a lot of textiles and it had it was big on business, but then architecture became like the design became big in the school, and you had a lot of international students. So one of the things, in my architectural class, the freshman year there were 6 of us. Okay, 6. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, architecture does not typically have a very diverse demographic. Typically, you'll find most of the architects are Caucasian or like Asian descent. So, of course, those 6 people during orientation in the beginning, when you first go to school, you find each other because you want to find your tribe. And I went to a basically predominantly all black high school because like the town was predominantly black. We had a lot of Spanish and very like a handful of white people. So me going, and I intentionally chose to go to a mixed school so I can kind of get like a really good diverse education. That was my intention. So we find our 6, whatever. And after the first semester, there was only about 4 of us. After that first year, it was only 2. Okay. So my class, there were 2 of us that graduated, and I was the only black male. And as a matter of fact, I was the first black male to graduate from that program at Philadelphia University when I graduated. The other person who I came with, we got to know each other. She graduated. She was the second black female to graduate from that school. But I say that to say, during my first year, that summer, I tend to like to get to know the professors, whatever. But for whatever reason, there was one professor, a white guy. His name, Rob Fleming, will never forget him. And Rob, if you're watching this, hello to you. But his mother was, I believe his mother was black and his father was white. So he was mixed. But he presents as, when you see him, he looks like a white man. But when you talk to him, and like his wife was black and his kids are biracial also, he kind of took a liking to me. He was like, you know what? I want to help you because, one, you're the first. And then 2, you don't have the advantage that a lot of these other kids that are coming here had. 'Cause a lot of them went to school, high school, and took like architecture classes. I didn't have any of that stuff. So they had a leg up on me. And he, saw that I worked really hard. He said, here, I used to work at this firm. I said, and he was like, I want you to go there and apply for a summer intern job. I went there with high recommendations from him. I sat down, they loved me. They said, all right, we'll bring you on for the summer. I love telling the story because it was supposed to be a 3-month internship. Now, mind you, most internships you don't get paid for. I got paid for it.
Oh, okay.
As we're getting close to the end, they said, you know what? We'd love for you to come and still work with us during the semester. Let us know your schedule and how many, hours you can work during the week. And I turned that 3-month internship into a 13-year. Well, actually,
Oh,
no. I I worked for that company for 15, 20 years. Oh, no, 15
Mm.
years, 15 years.
okay.
I didn't have to, apply for jobs after graduation. I literally was working the entire time. I went to them and I said, you know what? Just to get the experience, I want to interview. I interviewed with the same person that hired me originally. And then the other thing too is, for the most part, at that job, I was like a handful of people. In the Philadelphia office at the time, there was probably about 150 people that worked there. There were only maybe about, I want to say 4 to 5 African Americans that worked in that office. I never ever felt as though I did not belong. I never ever felt as though I was like a quote unquote DEI hire. I
Mm.
was a part of that firm and I worked my way through and I had a good career there to the point where, they even opened up other offices. I was the first employee to go and open up their New York City office. So, even though a lot of times we always find ourselves as like the only ones in spaces, sometimes you have those people that are willing to help you to make sure one, you're not the only one, and then two, that you get the same treatment that everyone else gets. I never ever felt any difference. I never felt like I was less than. And I took all the opportunities and I asked for opportunities and was given them because I asked. And then also because I had a reputation and I showed what I could do. So even though we're living in a world where it can be disheartening, um, sometimes it's good to find your tribe, but then also to kind of step outside of your tribe to make
Right.
space for yourself and then to also bring people in. Because one of the other things too that I always did was I would always go back to my alma mater and I would be a guest critic for a semester. I was a student teacher there. I taught computer aid drafting classes there while I was in school and then after I graduated. And what I always did was I always looked out for minority students, black, brown, people of color, and I would bring them and say, "Hey, look, why don't you apply for a job here?" And they would hire them because
Mm,
one, it goes by recommendation. A lot of times people will go on a great recommendation, especially
right.
if you're someone that they can trust. So always looking out for other people. And till this day, when I started in social media, one of the things that I really want to focus on was highlighting black and brown people.
There we go
Well, it
again.
was a perfect opportunity for it to light us up, but a perfect to highlight people of color with businesses or just a social presence because as we've talked about and I've talked about extensively when I started on social media that people like us don't get the same opportunities on social media that
Absolutely.
our white counterparts do. They can come on and not have a good idea, but just because they're white and they're doing something stupid, have these amazing followings. Whereas
Right.
black people who have
Or if I
proven
may
themselves
inject,
over time,
the black kids will come up with the idea, the dance or whatever, and then the white
Right.
kid
yes,
does it, and then
They'll
they
take
get
yes,
it.
all of the.
yes, yes.
Absolutely. All the
So
time.
that's why I made it a point to always highlight them. When I my Friday conversations, that's specifically what that was about. Taking brown and black and brown people that looked like me that were doing something on social media and trying to push what they were doing. And I've seen some of these people like they've taken off, they're doing their thing. But if we don't get those opportunities and if we don't get highlighted, how are people supposed to know about us?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
see here.
My, yeah.
Lisa says, I think I told y'all, but my boss called me buckwheat at
Yeah.
my
I
job,
remember that.
and my case was picked up by the EEOC, and I won a couple
Mhm.
of $100,000.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
for you.
I
I
remember
wish I would
that.
have knew about the EEOC when I was at the stock exchange.
Yeah. Now
Boy,
my school experience, you all know, is different. It's like I spent the majority of my early school years in Tuskegee, so it was all black. Every teachers,
mm,
students, and a lot of family. My family, teachers as family, they can be really tough on you in the sense of making sure
Mm.
you had foundation, right? When I finally got to my high school, it was a little more integrated. It used to be a white community, and it was kind of, the white people were kind of moving out, but it was still an integrated high school. It was huge. It was a huge a population of students. And when I first got there, and I don't know why they did this, they had me in remedial classes, which was hilarious. And so all of my teachers, the first month, advocated for me to get out of their classes. They're like, she can't stay in here. She needs to go to a different class. And that school had 5 tracks. 5 tracks.
Why so many?
Because you had special education, which was regular special education. You had remedial. You had average. You had above average, and you had superior students.
What's a superior student?
They asked me. So in the story, they do ask me when I'm in like the 10th grade. 10th grade, I think they asked me, did I want to go into class with the superior students? And I told them no, but they had classes I wanted to take. So I was able to choose those. But in my first year in math, when I finally got to the average classes, the math teacher tried to get me moved again. They said they couldn't do it twice, but she really supported me and advocated for me, and she understood that I knew a lot. So there were things that she respected that, and she supported me in that part. And I always had in that school, all of my teachers were very supportive. Well, only time I ran into a teacher who kind of gave me flack, well, not because I was Black, but because she kept accusing me of talking in class. It was a Spanish class. I just took her to the office and dealt with that. And they said, and the counselor told her, we're going to fix this, and you're going to leave her alone. So that's how it went. But I had that advantage in that high school environment to have teachers from, most of my teachers were white teachers there, but they all were supportive. None of them treated any of us as if you're just Black or they're white. They never treated you that way. So my high school experience was really good. And even when I got to my first school in Ohio, Baldwin Wallace, my white Spanish teacher professor was like, okay, so you can understand it, but you don't speak it well. So she actually had me come out of class and made sure I was able to present in front of the class in Spanish. So there were teachers along the way in those environments that helped. And so, so I, like Chris, my experience for most of my academic career, most of those were positive experiences. I only had that one guy who said something. I knew what it was about, but we didn't go back and forth about it. But everyone else was very supportive, and I always say that it, like for me, I went to UDC, is a Black school, but I went there because I could afford to pay for my undergraduate and not come out with a debt. And at that time, my husband and I had one child, and he was the only person working, so I could not have debt. And when I got my bachelor's degree, I was summa cum laude, and I was the top student in the math, science, and engineering department, which as a female, even there in that environment, people were saying, well, how'd you do that? I was like, this ain't what you did. We had a white dean, and my chairperson went to him and said, I want her to stay, and I want her to be an adjunct professor.
Nice.
Wow.
And he said, okay, I support that. So I got a lot of support from within that.
Was that how you got into teaching?
That actually, I taught there for a couple of years, had my youngest daughter who celebrated her birthday yesterday. And then I went on, I didn't do anything for 13 years while I was raising my younger 2 kids, the 3 kids all together at that point. And so I got into teaching because I went to the local high school when my daughter was there and volunteered in her math teacher's class. And was not as a mathematician. See, I was trained as a mathematician. I got a degree on applied mathematics with a minor in statistics. So as a mathematician, I'm listening to her teach the children, and it's like, boy, she's not opening up everything for them. And so I had her open some stuff up to them and had her actually start having them write papers, because it was an majority Black school. That's where I started having students write the short papers on African American scientists, mathematicians, and inventors, because of the inevitable question, what do you do with math? And so I started it with that teacher's class. And then watching that and not being happy with all that, the principal who was there had the next year had overlapping classes. Don't ask me why that happened. And so the same teacher was scheduled to teach Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 exact same slot. So I volunteered to teach for a year to teach Algebra 1 students. And that next year, he and the superintendent convinced me to teach. So that was in '98. That's how I started. That's actually how I got.
Wow.
You know, I'm curious about. I mean, there's people in the community. I know Lisa shared her story.
Right.
Has anyone ever gone? I mean, just in the community, have you guys experienced? What age were you? That's a good question. What age were you when you first experienced your first real identifiable racist or bigot interaction in either your career or in school? When was the first time? Just put it in the comment box. I'm just curious. The question was, there was a question here for David says, first he says, I've heard Boston is pretty bad unless you play for the Celtics or Pats or Red Sox. My neighbor played for the Patriots, and he told me this.
Heard
Yes,
that.
I have friends
heard
that live in
so
Boston. Boston is
If
one
you
of the
live
most
there, I've heard
racist
that.
of the Northeast. I remember when I
Yeah.
went to Boston on a trip, and I got mixed up on I drove into the wrong neighborhood to South Boston. Why did I end up in South Boston? I made a turn around what they call Bunker Hill, and next thing you know, I saw these white folks coming out of the buildings. Get out of the neighborhood, using the N-word. Get out of the neighborhood.
Wow.
I was like, holy moly! I was like, we're in the wrong neighborhood. And then David also says, Ron, have you ever gone back for any reunions? I never went to my reunions at my high school. I never did. I just didn't feel connected in that way.
I get that.
My friends, I do have friends from my high school that I still know, and that I think it's just 2 or 3 of them. But other than that, I didn't feel connected. Also, my school was an all-boys school, Masonry. We only had 3 girls in our school. And so our school wasn't, it was really good for academics, meaning we got our FAA licenses, we got our, academically, it was great. We learned so much in the school, but the social environment was not rewarding. I mean, it wasn't like you went to school and you had all these memories of being together and talking and having and also because the Black students, we were all in one section, and our lunches were different. So you only see 2 or 3 of us or 5 of us. And, so we never had that ability to build strong relationships. And then the white kids in the school, 1 or 2 would hang out with us. The rest of them were like, those are the Black kids. We don't go near them. Or it's just also how human beings interact as well. Now that I've studied psychology in group dynamics, people are drawn by things that are easy for them. So some people, their prejudice is because they will be drawn. They see white people. It's the easy place to go, and you're white, so you go to the white. If you're Black, you go to the Black.
Which is
that was very big in my school, and but I never found that. I never had a desire to ever go to the reunions, and it just was never that way.
Yeah, and what you just described is the whole point of Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum's book. Why do all the Black kids eat together in the cafeteria? It's not about that. It's about why all people do what they do.
Yes.
And what I had to educate teachers on teaching, I said, who are you most comfortable eating with? That's children gravitate to people that they're comfortable with. And one of the things is that when people talk about places and the South is this and that, the most racist places I've lived have been in northern states. Southern states, they weren't walking around in Tuskegee or any place calling people niggers all day long. They weren't. They were saying the N-word. Sorry about that, internet people. But they weren't walking around calling people the N-word all day long. They weren't. They didn't call my grandmother Gail when I went to the store. The man said, "That's Miss Leola." This is a white man who owned the store. He said, "That's Miss Leola's granddaughter." He called her Miss Leola.
When I got older, I did not go to the South until I was in my teenage years, like 16, 17 years old. What I did appreciate about the Southern states and living, my grandparents lived in North Carolina, and when I would visit them, is that the white people that did not like black people, let you didn't have to guess. It was just like, she don't like black people, don't bother with her, or they would not acknowledge. They would just keep moving. I mean, it was very blatant. It was very I should say, in the northern states, it's cloaked.
It's covert.
It's cloaked in all of the smiles, and everyone's acting like they are cordial. But in the southern states, when Bobby, wherever, redneck Bob, when he didn't want to be dealing with you, he didn't. And that's what I appreciated about the South, is the honesty of not being able to have to figure it all out. It was very blatant. It was very to the point, and you were able to say, okay, that person does not like black people. And my grandparents would tell me, like my grandfather would say, he don't like black people. Don't bother with him.
You know what's even worse? When you come across black people that don't like other black people, and
that's a whole nother story.
So here's the story. You asked the question, when did you like really have like your real true racist experience? And I think we're all aware of racism growing up and stuff like that. But for me, that one instance was early 20s, out of college. And I was, I love to shop downtown in Philly because I worked down there. It was convenient. I'll go on my lunch breaks, like the different men's stores, whatever. Today's Man was like one of my big stores I used to go to. Then there was another store, I forget the name of it, but I went in there one day, and I'll never forget, it was a Friday. Went in there, I was looking for some dress pants and some slacks. And, I go in, I look, and everyone's attentive. Oh, hello, how are you? How can we help you? If you need anything, just let me know. We're right over here. Now, mind you, I had on a pair of slacks. I don't think I had a suit on. I had a dress shirt on, tie, and slacks and some shoes, all right? I'm looking, I'm like, okay, I see some stuff that I might want to get, but I didn't want to buy the stuff that had to take it home on the bus. Whatever, because I would, sometimes take the bus or the train to work. I had a car. And so I said, I'm going to come back tomorrow, that Saturday. And they had a sale that was starting on Saturday, so I'm going to wait. So I come back in the next day. Now, mind you, same person, same haircut. I had on a pair of Timbs, pair of jeans, and a hoodie. Same store, same people. The moment I walk in, I feel them starting to watch me, and then it's like, well, and it just got really, really bad. I was like, you know what? I was in here yesterday, and the moment I walked in the door, everyone's trying to make a sale with me, and all of a sudden now I got security following me around. I'm like, you know what? I will never effing come back in here, and I'm gonna tell everyone that I know not to come here. That store didn't last very much longer. They were out of business within like the next 6 months because this was a habit that they had of treating people like that. I'm like, I'm the same person that came in the day before that had on a shirt and tie. It's Saturday. I'm more relaxed. And yet still, you see me as a threat. I'm coming in there to steal. When yesterday my money was good enough to buy your shit.
Right. But, and that's the thing you were talking about, how we are sometimes with each other, right? So the thing is that we other each other. Other each other. So I grew up here, I went there. And so when I see these children or these people from over here, somehow I'm better, but you're not. You're still the same. But we do that to each other. I don't want to go to this school because there's too many of them over there. There are too many people that look like this. So I don't want to go over there. But that means that you're doing the same thing that they do. You're doing the same othering of your own people that they do. It really is. And so we get into, we wonder how we got to the colorism and all of that stuff within our culture, which is, to me, worse today than it has been in a while. But it's all there, right?
Absolutely.
Because we other each other. I
Mm.
walk into, I watch people. I'm a people watcher. So you walk down the street, I see Black people move over when they see young Black people, just like white people move over, assuming who they are. Me, on the other hand, if I have something to say, or I feel like I need to talk to address young people, I go up to them, shake their hand, and introduce myself and talk to them and have a conversation, and not end up being judgmental, because that's who we are at our core. So when we try to get away from our own people, it's the same thing they're doing. And then we often want other people to treat us better than we treat each other.
Yeah.
How should they treat you? We set the example. We set the example to the world how to treat us by how we treat each other. So if I cross the street, when you come
you
into a
say
space,
something that is, I'm going to interject, but it says is I found it. I mean, it's interesting to say when I revisit my life over a arching history, that I remember that in our Black communities, if you were dark skinned, you were not treated properly. I remember so many of my friends who were darker than me, when the parents, it would be the parents would be like, oh, he's agreed. I've heard some of the, here's a phrase, and don't be insulted. One woman in the neighborhood called the kid that was dark skinned a greasy spoon. And I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, she's like, oh, she was telling the girls, don't be bothered with the greasy spoon. And I didn't realize until I was older that was a racist statement, because he was very dark skinned, and so when he was sweat, his face would shine. So she called him a greasy spoon.
Right.
And I remember all of the, when I look back over my childhood years, the discrimination within our own community is just as profound as, if not in a lot of cases, was worse than when I interacted with in aviation high school or in the college or on Wall Street, because the blatancy of the, I mean, we literally did have a paper bag judgment. I mean, it may not have been said, but it was truly, I remember when Black boys were always, the teachers would give them a harder time. They gave them, and this was by Black teachers. I mean, we had Black teachers that would also be prejudiced to the dark skinned kids. And but then now in the new millennia we live in, Black is beautiful. I mean, you see the advertisements. Everybody has to be dark skinned and blah 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 blah. But in the early years when we were growing up, if you went to become a news anchor, it was light skin. If you're going to be a teacher or anything prestigious, you had to be light skin, and you couldn't wear certain looks. You couldn't have any braids. You couldn't have any cornrows. There was truly, you had to be able to fit in. Even on Wall Street, I remember all the light skinned people got jobs and got promotions, and the dark skinned people you just go along your business. So,
but I always tell people that's a part of the grooming, right? That's a part of the grooming. That's how you keep us from fully embracing each other. And I always said, whether Willie Lynch was real or not, the letter was effective in saying that if you're lighter, you're better. If you're browner, no, you go away. But even in that context, there are people who were lighter also were not treated kindly all the time either.
Well, that's true too.
Because
Now
they
that's
were
true.
in
I
between, like,
remember
well, what
that
are you? Are
too.
you black or you
Yeah.
white?
Yes,
Right.
if you were light
Yeah.
skinned, they were like she was a white girl or she was this.
Right.
Oh
And
Yeah.
yes,
it's
I
like
remember those
you think
days too.
it's the
You're
whole
trying
thing.
to pass.
You think you're better than me and all of this stuff. And
Yes,
my kids laugh
yes.
because I tell them, I say, I say, oh, I'm just brown. And they're like, Mom, stop. I said, well, I thought I was compared to the rest of my family, right? But the part is how we, and what, because it has been there, we have to figure out how to stop it because it's still there. It's not that it left. We still have, you look at actors and actresses, that stuff is still alive. You still can't just present yourself often with your hair, your own natural hair. But I watch African movies all the time. They bleaching their skin. They all having these wigs. It's the whole thing. And I see Lisa
Yes.
about the deltas and delta back in that day. There was a brown
Yeah.
test, literally, to get into those sororities. And of course, my skin color, I would have passed. But a part of my mentality that kept me from doing a lot of things within certain groups was, how do we judge each other and how much we have to pay just to be associated with each other? How the Jack and Jill organizations, how children, I never forget, they had an interview with the national president one time on TV, and her daughter was there. Her daughter was like 13 years old. And she said she liked Jack and Jill because she got to be with other children who had as much money as she had. And I was like, but you're 13, you don't have any money. Your parents have money. You're 13. You don't have money. And so think of that mindset and what it's teaching you. So even when you do community service within a Black community, if you have that mindset, I'm helping the poor Black people out, the ones who are less than me. So we have to figure out, how do we get away from treating each other as less than? And our experiences, our traumas in life are what gets us there, and knowing that to be lighter or closer to white means you're somehow better, your hair closer to that. I mean, as soon as I told y'all in high school, as soon as that man cut all my hair off and my cousin came and cornrowed that hair, and I was in the 11th grade, I was the only girl in the entire high school, which probably had over 1,000 kids in it, with cornrows in her hair. The only one. Because I said, I am going to be me. And I don't care what you all say. No one ever said anything. No one ever asked me about those braids. And I think because I had learned to carry myself a certain way and didn't really care if people had to say anything.
Wow.
So experiences, but I think that the part of how do we start looking at, you have people who are lighter to us, but maybe not as lighter as a family member, considering themselves not light enough. Because you're not as light as that one. And I think that's where all of that stuff still plays a role in it. It also still interferes. It impacts how we are socially. It impacts how we work with each other. And that's why I always tell people to kind of understand some of the mentality. That movie, American Skin, I did remember the right title that Nate Parker did. And it's about a man whose son gets shot by a police officer and his response to that. But in there, he puts the police on trial at the station with some inmates, but he talks to both the Black police officers and a Hispanic police officer as to why they treat their own people a certain way. I think it's very interesting to listen to what they say in that movie.
Wow. I mean, Lisa's sharing some stuff in the chat. Yes. I put some of this on the screen while you were talking. And then we're going to I said, and a mom at my son's school wanted us to join. And I told another darker skinned family about it so we could do it together. And the J&J woman said that family wasn't what they were looking for. I mean, right. I've seen, we have a lot of resolution to do in our society, in our community, because we, I don't know how we got this. I mean, this conversation, but we always go with the flow of our conversations here in our community. And but listen, I mean, when just look at the chat, just look at what people are putting in the chat. People have gone through. Yeah. People in this community, we've all gone through some stuff.
Right. And I think that's an important part of this conversations like this, Because you talk about colorism and family. My older daughter is very brown like her father, right? So beautiful, beautiful. My sister says, oh, something about her, how people loved, thought she was so beautiful, and something about her brown skin. I said, so what did you expect? Look at her father. Like, he's brown. And I said, and I informed her, I said, so you have a problem. You have a problem. And your problem is how beautiful people think my daughter is. And you're trying to figure it out in your head. Are they saying the same thing about your daughter? Because your daughter's lighter, but they're not saying how beautiful she is all the time. But beauty is beauty, right? And within the family, my mother was like, she was a colorist. She was one of those people, and I put her in check all the time. And I think that was a blessing for me to be able to be as vocal as I was, because I put my mother in check. I was like, no, we're not going through that. We're not going to talk about anybody's complexion or she looks, because they say the same thing that the other people say. Oh, she's beautiful for a brown girl. What do you mean? She's just beautiful.
It's also like she's articulate for a black woman, or she's
person.
Articulate. Yeah. I used to hate that. Oh, you're articulate.
You speak so well. No,
you speak so
like you speak so well.
I mean, we talked about Trump on yesterday, talking to the president of Liberia, and saying,
"Where do you learn to speak English so well?
Speak such great English?
The international language, you
he
dumbass."
Said, hello, that's not. We speak English here.
And
anyway,
not knowing the history of Liberia. Not knowing the history of Liberia. That was the problem. Like,
he didn't know the history. I said, don't you know the history? How the country
Who are you
started?
asking like that? I'm sorry, guys. That's a dumb question. Look who we're asking about. Let's not give him any points.
Speaking of black and greatness in black, I want to just advertise something. For those that are into photography, Jamel Shabazz, the Black Photographers Collective, Howard Cash, Black Eyes Collective, and the Pat Museum presents the second annual World Photography Day in Brooklyn. So if you're in New York City, make sure you come out and you are a photographer. Here's a list of clips. Last year it was just the photographers, but this year they've expanded it. So it's photographers, curators, writers, models, musicians, collectors, graphic artists, gallery owners, journalists, actors, actresses, and all who use photography.
Wonderful.
Come on out, and we're going to do at 11 o'clock, 11 group photo at 11 a.m. sharp. We did that last year. My photo is right here on the advertisement, which is cool. And we did that last year. Jamel Shabazz took pictures took all of us. It's in his latest book that just came out. And you can find his latest, I do believe, in the Amazon store. It should be there. If so, then I'll be putting it into for those that don't know, all the people that come on our show, Touch Base Daily Show, we have Amazon. You can just click the Amazon in the description, and you can go to all their books and stuff. So make sure you do that. But this is August 16th. 2025. We're meeting at the Brooklyn Museum. Huge, beautiful platform for us to be able to do this, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you put this on your calendar. Come out August 16th. I will be sharing this. I will try to share this as much as possible, so that way people, whoever sees this, will be able to come out and experience this. This is going to be awesome. Sorry. And
can I make a quick comment to everyone? Recommendation, actually. So as we've been watching the comments on the side, I would suggest for everyone, because this brings up all of our trauma, our childhood experiences, and as we grow up, all the experiences up to this point. Because there's this thing I say, because after I read a poem called 11. Every person you've ever been at every age is still inside you with all of the emotions and experiences. They're still in there. So as you reflect on what we've gone through and talked about today and the things that have popped up for you, either take the time to write about it, or if you're not a writer, go to your phone, push the voice record, and record what you're feeling. Because I think you need to acknowledge that part of you, that person that experienced that whenever it took place, so that you honor that. So just take that time and write it down. Write it down, record it, whatever it is to you, And that's what these conversations help us do. A lot of times it brings up other thoughts, emotions, because there are some people, based on some of the comments I've seen, has brought up some emotions.
Yes.
I think do whatever you are comfortable with, but acknowledge it and put it down in some form, either in writing or record it.
I love that. I love that, Lise. That, I mean, because these conversations, I mean, they can be triggering. They could be when you think about the past and you remember those years and you're like, whoa, that was what it was. And then sometimes, I'm talking to one of my buddies yesterday. He's had this dating situation that he seems to be drawn to the folks that are not good people. Let's put it that way. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but he and I said to him, I said, buddy, you need to get therapy. I say, because your inner child is making you make these decisions, and until you figure out what that little child in you is going through, that trauma, something happened that makes you feel like you have to rescue the worst of the people,
right,
and make them your person that you're going to be romantically involved in.
Yeah.
I said, something has happened, because it goes, I said, we've been down this road many times, and now you're telling me that now you got to deal with this today, and you're on a plane to save this and do whatever. And I said, can I give you some advice? Therapy is a good thing.
Right.
We all need therapy. And the smartest, the calmest, the most good looking, the most looks like they got it all together. Everyone needs.
Those are the ones you got to worry about the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, because there's things that are in us that are, I love that when they say the child in you is still in you.
Absolutely.
And the child that has been traumatized by whatever that thing was is still in you. And that child influences your decision making as an adult. And until you solve what the little person, the little child in you is going through or has gone through, it will plague your life to the end. And so I told them yesterday, I said, you have to. I said, could you please, when you break up with this person today, or how you're going to break off with this person, please seek therapy. You make lots of money, so this is no excuse. I said, you can do this. I said, I will help you walk through it. I said, but I will keep reminding you if you want me to. But until you're ready, it can be done anyway. So you need. We all have these things that trigger us.
Yeah, I think so many people don't realize they need individual therapy before they can be in relationship with other people, because they need to find out, why do we hold on or fight for relationships that aren't working in our best interest? Why are we attracted to the same types of people?
Let it
uncover
go.
that, and you can't do it. And I was telling someone recently, you can't do that in a couples counseling. You need to do individual first before you can even think about that, because you need to uncover, what is it, what traumas you have, what did you learn? I told you all the other day, I used to say, what did you learn about love? No, what did you learn about relationships as you were growing up? That's based on how people treated you, on what you saw the adults or other people around you experience. All of that stuff is inside of us, and and when we're in relationship with people, it gets triggered. Either we're gonna say, nope, I'm not dealing with that, or you're gonna say, I'm gonna keep fighting for this, even though I see the handwriting on the wall that this is not for me, but I'm gonna still keep trying, because I've been taught by watching people stay in bad situations forever to think I should stay in a bad situation.
Yes, Lisa, thank you. Yeah, send me. I love, like I said, today is my first day with my new therapist. So I have my new therapist later on, probably at 3:00. So I'm
going for a massage.
Therapy. I'm going for a mental, emotional massage. I told Adrian, I said, I'm going to need a therapist for sure. I mean, it just happened. My insurance company is so funny because after I had my surgery, and being a cancer survivor, my insurance company has assigned me a therapist. And I was like, they said, would you like this service? At first I was like, I said, you know what, why not? Let's bring it on. I said, I could use a therapist, and I think everyone needs a therapist. You need people to be able to just that have no connection to your, like, it's not going to be they have no connection to your situation, and you can share these things out, and then they can help you find your answer,
Right.
because they don't tell you the answer. They're usually helping you to find the answer within you, and that's so important. So
Right.
I'm going to do some announcements, and then we're out. Hey, there we go. We have here, if you want to stay on the mailing list, join the mailing list through going to ronlewisphotos.com. Make sure you do that, and you'll get all our updates. Make sure also that you if you have friends that are looking for an event photographer or headshots, anything like that, let them know I am a photographer. Recommend me to your friends. Recommend me to your friends and to your loved ones. Also, the Patreon community. We just want to say thank you to the Patreon community. You make this possible. We could not be here without you. You are the ones that are supporting, paying for the StreamYard that we use every day, paying for the Canva we use every day. All the stuff that we do, you are helping us with that. So thank you so much for being a part of this community. If you're not in the Patreon community and you come here every day, or you listen to what we're doing here, you support, and we bring change and we help you in some way, give back, share, donate, create, build, become part of the Patreon community. Or if not, you can always use that little dollar bill on the channel here on the side on your YouTube, and you can click on that as well. So that's always possible. But guys, this was a great conversation, and let's get this banner on here. Sorry, my bad. Let me get back to our banner. There we go. This was a great conversation, and I love when we have our conversations like this. So let's do it. It is time. It is time to let you guys go. Thank you, Elise, for coming here, being a part of the conversation, being on the panel. And Chris, thank you for sharing. We did a lot of sharing today, a lot of
We
deep
did do a lot of sharing today.
Our community is really about the therapy. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? Oh, it worked on time
Yes.
today. Oh, yes, we love you all. Thank you for popping on with us. Thank you for being a part of the day. And we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is our Focus Friday. Later. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Make sure you hit the like, the subscribe, and leave a comment on this video. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again. Until I see you next time.